Pilot Boys in the building. Let's go.
Pilot Boys, we get on up. We the fly boys, we getting up.
You are listening to the Pilot Boys podcast. We are joined by a very special guest. I don't even know where to start with this guy, man. We originally met him as a DJ, but now he's turned into much more than that. He's obviously an entrepreneur, investor, podcast host. Formerly known as Mick Boogie, now known as Mick. Mick, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining us, man.
Well, guys, it's great to see you.
Good to see you, man. Hope you're holding up well during this pandemic.
It's fun.
Your story is amazing, man, and one that is literally for the history books as far as music is concerned. Just kind of how you've navigated this business from beginning to end. What you've kind of contributed to the culture as well. Legendary pieces of work literally legendary things that will go down in history. And then also how you kind of transformed along the way and kind of recreated and reinvented yourself a couple of different times, and all of them have been very successful. So we're very excited about this interview. We're going to start from the beginning.
Yep. Yeah, I think we start at Youngstown, and I think as to kind of follow what Mecca was saying is I think the term brand gets thrown around a lot, right? Like everyone says I'm in branding or I brand or I'm a marketer. But I think your story really showcases what brand development is over a long window of time. It's not something you just say.
Long window, very long.
So, and it started in a place that a lot of dreams probably people don't think start, in a little town, actually in suburban not even Youngstown, suburban Youngstown. Poland, Ohio.
Yeah.
So kind of tell us how you even first got into music and what your first exposure was to it, because I'm sure hip hop wasn't necessarily a big part of the culture in Poland.
No, it didn't exist, obviously. Like I had records when I was in kindergarten. I remember that. I couldn't read yet. And I remember my mom wrote an M on one of the records, so I knew what side to play of the song I liked. It was a country record. It was Elvira by the Oak Ridge Boys. It's like a classic country record that I haven't listened to in like 20 or 30 years. I'm sure it's racist and anti-feminist and all that in retrospect. So it's not like, let's not play it, but I don't know. But so that was my first record. And I distinctively remember walking around, and I know this was kindergarten or before because my cat's eventually going to be scratching on the door. I still got the same cat, guys, from Cleveland.
Still alive?
Wow.
Young Hove, he's 17.
Oh.
So he'll make an appearance at some point. And so anyways, I had these records I used to carry around, and it was definitely an early age that I fell in love with music. And I remember moving to a new house for elementary school, first to fifth grade. And I remember, hearing hip hop for the first time. So I used to I remember hearing LL, I Need Love. I remember hearing Fresh Prince, Parents Just Don't Understand, which was like the first song I memorized. My sister and I used to walk around the house rapping it. The first cassette I ever bought, I always show this on podcasts, but I actually keep it in my drawer. It's where's the camera here? Yeah. Why can't I do this? It's like a mirror. It's crazy. Anyways, that album, and I still have it to this day. And it inspired me to learn more. And then in sixth grade, I moved again to a different neighborhood. And at that point, I was starting to travel back and forth to Florida to visit my grandparents. And my grandparents they lived in Naples, Florida, which was the whitest of the white Florida towns ever. I'm quite sure it's super Trumpy, but for some reason, they had BET.
Yeah.
And we didn't have it where I lived in Youngstown. So for 1 month out of the year, I actually got to, I watched Young TV Raps religiously, but that was once a week or maybe, and then it became the weekday show. But having access to watching BET and learning everything for 1 month out of the year was game changing for me through middle school. And at that point, then hip hop started becoming more mainstream, both from a proverbial Hammer Vanilla Ice standpoint, which was a gateway entry for a lot of people, but also a level or two below that, Tribe and Black Sheep and Cypress Hill and Beastie Boys and all that was bubbling above the underground, but below the Hammer level. So I would get to that level of understanding the culture from a truly paying respect perspective. Then once I was in high school, hip hop completely blew up with Wu-Tang and Biggie and the Chronic and Tupac and all that stuff. So then at that point, it was easy for me to like acquire magazines and books, and this is all pre-internet and albums. But I remember distinctively being the kid that would never want to go and get like the same, to go to the mall and get like the cassette single. I would want to go either get the CD single because it had bonus tracks and remixes, or I would drive somewhere and have them order me the import cassette single that had the other tracks that didn't make like the album, because I always wanted to have like the song that nobody had, the version nobody had. I didn't know what DJing was. I didn't know that that was essentially what DJing is. Yeah. You know, more so was, but still is in a lot of ways. You know, and so all of that kind of informed me. And then when I went to college, I became a DJ for real. And all of those experiences, my cat's at the door, all of those experiences made me want to be a DJ. And then I moved to Cleveland, where I met you guys, and I'm a real DJ. Let me just open. Let me just get my phone. Yeah. Ask the question. I'm sure people are very excited. So, okay.
You can still hear us?
Yeah.
Okay. What were, at that point in time, what was it that made you actually decide that you wanted to be a DJ versus just be a music head or a music lover? What is it that made you feel like, okay, you know, this is where I feel like I want to make my mark in this space?
It was a few things. So I just, as a music, I grew up playing instruments. I grew up playing drums and piano. So for me, it was very, the DJing aspect of hip hop culture was the one that appealed to me. Like, I can't draw, I can't rap, I can't dance. So like DJing was pretty much what I was left with anyways. Natural extension of me as a musician. Right. I loved like hearing like Jazzy Jeff. I loved hearing like Pete Rock remixes and all of these things. So I was kind of gravitated towards that. I distinctively remember the episodes of MTV Raps that made the biggest impact on me were the ones that had special guest DJs. And you know, again, not knowing anything about the culture at the time, but knowing I just loved the music. So it all kind of just informed me. And then when I went to college, I couldn't bring drums because that, you know, you'd be a dick.
Right.
So I got turntables. So I had a Jordan rookie card, which wasn't in mint condition, but it was good enough to sell. And I got like $600 for it and flipped that into some used turntables. And that got stolen a few years later. But whatever. You know, shout out to what was that place in Cleveland? Odeon? No, I don't know. Anyways, back parking lot ripped out. They stole speakers from my car. Everything was crazy.
Disaster.
But you know, anyways, that I moved there and I was like, I could do this. And so I distinctively, just to add one little more part of that about like how you can kind of like manifest the shit that you want. I remember when I went on college tours, I toured every college in Cleveland and Pittsburgh. And then when I toured at John Carroll, which is where I ended up going, I saw the radio station and I was able to look in the window, and it was like this dark hallway, but the window was illuminated. It wasn't like some colleges where the radio station's like in a different building, or it's like it's on top floor of something, you know, you would never see it. And there were many colleges that they're like that. It was a separate a little house, like Case Western's like that. It's like a little house somewhere. Like John Carroll's radio station was right outside the gym and right outside the cafeteria. You had to walk by that motherfucker every day. So I was like, whoa, that's the only thing I remember from that tour was like there were turntables, there were crates and walls of vinyl, and there were people like talking, and I was just like, this excites me. So I remember telling my mom, like, we're good. We could wrap this shit right here. Like I didn't use those words.
Right.
Yeah, use those words.
And you also decided to get your MBA, and you know, student by day, kind of DJ by night.
I stayed getting my MBA at John Carroll so I can keep doing my show. Actually, which is like that's how much I loved, because that show gave me my career, and that show gave me the ability to get on commercial radio, do clubs, build my brand, do all that stuff. And so I literally think it's funny, like, DJing led me to where I did my education, and then where I did my education ended up extending so I could keep DJing. And so it's just like a really weird, you know, conclusion of events, but I love it.
And why the MBA?
2 reasons. One, I needed to stall a little bit. I needed to stall and figure out what I wanted to do. Actually, 3 reasons. 2, I was a pretty smart dude at the time. Like now it's a little sus, but like I wanted to like take advantage of that while I could, and you know, because I had opportunity to do it. And then 3, I wanted to like kind of future-proof myself a little bit, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Did you have any sense of how much that was actually going to help you in terms of branding yourself? Was there a moment that you realized, hey, this MBA is not just something to pass time or buy time. This is something that's actually valuable to me in addition to, you know, my talent as a DJ.
Years later, like during the show, during the MBA, no, you know, it was just, I was ridiculed for getting my MBA while I was being a DJ. Like, DJs didn't understand why I was doing that shit. School kids didn't understand why I was DJing. Nobody in their group. I was like, this is 02, 03, 04.
Yeah.
You know, I was, people they did not want me in their group. Like, I didn't work for Progressive selling insurance. So I wasn't working at like, you know, whatever, you know, Goodyear, whatever the fuck is out there. And it was just like, you know, and I'm just like, I turned out fine. And I remember the teacher, and I tell the story a zillion times, but I remember the teacher was like, you got to choose creativity or you got to choose like business. Like, you can't do it. Drives me nuts. I can't align with this mic. It's like a fun house. But you see both hands, right? Like, it drove me nuts. And I went back there a couple years ago to speak to the students in the marketing department. And I told that story. And I don't remember the teacher who, thank God, but like, I could see the teachers in the back of the room start to like recoil a little, and I went into that story, but it's very true. But, you know, again, this is 2003. It's a different time. The internet was still new. Hip hop was not a global force it was, but it's not like it is now. It was Ohio. It wasn't like NYU, like Clive Davis School. Like, you know, there were constraints that they were just accepted constraints. Now they don't tell them that anyways. What's really cool to see actually is there's a I don't know his exact title, but he's like the dean of entrepreneurship or something there now. A really good guy named Dome, and he's the guy that brought me back there. And he allows kids to literally follow their dreams and let the MBA or the college stuff come second, as long as you're doing the work.
Yeah,
which is so cool. So like, there was a girl that I met who I've stayed in touch with who worked on a book, and they made her book. It was a real book, part of her curriculum. And there was a kid in a band. The teacher let him do a marketing study on his band as part of his curriculum. And I'm like, what? Where was this?
Right.
That's actually, it's funny because that's actually why I chose Case for my MBA, because they actually had an entrepreneurship program. And I went through some of those same challenges you went through, obviously, while in Cleveland, people not understanding what I did for a living and why I was getting my MBA. But I do think, you know, I think in all of these fields, I think DJing and I'd say DJing and like small business owners like barbers, they give a great case study on what it actually takes to run a business, right? And actually build something from the ground up, build your brand, learn how to make money from it, perfect your craft, and continue to work. It seems like it's not a business, but it is. The people who are successful in it, and we see it today.
I was never the best DJ in Cleveland, hands down, as far as a technical standpoint or skill standpoint. Never. I was the smartest.
Yep.
You know, both from what I was born with and also what I chose to like put into myself. But
it's funny.
There were so many people better than me.
Yep.
So when you talk about like, it's funny because when you talk about entertainment and like, you know, making it and all that type of stuff, people always want to know what your kind of big break is, right? Or big break was. But the interesting thing is, I don't know if people like us view it that same way, right? Because the answer what you just said to me seems like. Say again.
I'm still waiting for my big break.
No, but the answer really is you. You know, you were your big break. Your brain was your big break. That's what it seems like was what separated you and what was always going to separate you in this business.
Yeah, I hope so. I mean, that's the stuff I try to instill upon my kid. You know, like. Just be smart as fuck and be a good person and trust that the rest of the shit's going to work out.
But was there anything, I guess, you know, because people do want to know this, was there anything specific that happened that maybe made you say, okay, this is going to work out for me. This is going to be a career for me. You know, this is something that I should continue to pursue and not give up on.
Yeah. I mean, one was actually the fact that I paid for grad school using DJing. That was huge. And that was Cleveland DJing, right? That wasn't like stuff I moved to New York and eventually got to be a DJ where it was like really decent money, able to survive in New York money.
Right.
So, I was living, my expenses were super low also. So it was pretty easy in that regard. Like I was single, no kids. I was living in Cleveland Heights. My rent was $600-700 a month max.
Right.
My overhead monthly was probably like, I don't know, less than $1,500.
Those days were the best, man.
Those days are amazing. I have my health insurance now. But so, you do a couple of nights a week, 4 nights, 4 weeks out of the year. And I had I was like, this is great. Like I could get this MBA with debt. And when I finished it, I was like, oh, okay, like I got it. That showed me that my career path was like pretty legit to me. You could take something that's it was almost like funneling money, right? Like though I paid taxes, but it was just like, like you always talk, people always talk about like we have like a barbershop, like front other stuff and all that. Like for me, I was like, wait, I could turn this whole thing that you said wasn't a real thing, teacher, but I'm fucking paying your salary with it.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like I'm paying
right.
now. Like I'm not taking out a loan. Like I'm paying it now. So like that was a huge thing for me to be able to do that. So that was the point. This was 2005, 15 years ago. I started to take it more serious as a business because then I didn't. It was that time commitment of that was done. So now I had more time. So like, what am I going to do? And that was right around the time where I had a marketing pedigree, I had a really strong local brand. So then I started thinking like, what do I need to do? What are the steps, what I need to do, the relationships I need to make to get from here to whatever the next phase is going to be. And I knew the next phase for me was probably ultimately going to end up New York. As you guys know, so you guys had your New York phase and all of that as well. Mm-hmm. And for me, it was just like, how do I do that? And so it was just like, what are the biggest things in Cleveland I can attach myself to? Well, okay, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I want to do all their parties. What are the biggest brands of Cleveland? I want to make sure I'm working with all of them. Whenever anything comes to Cleveland for anything that's like national, I want to DJ that. And then of course the whole Cavs and LeBron thing. And I was able to integrate myself into that system too. Use a fucking pitch deck. Like I made them a pitch. I wish I had it. Like it was horrible. Like I made them a deck, like a PDF, not a PDF. It was like a PowerPoint. Like they should like fly in, like from the sides and all that. Like, and I got the Cavs gig, and I think it paid me like $200 a game, maybe. Like it was really bad money. It was good money for Cleveland in DJ terms. For that, it was really bad money, but it didn't matter because I was just like, now I have access to the Pepsi people, the Coke people, the Gatorade people, the whatever people. So I would use it as a loss leader to be like, okay, cool, you're at this game, great. You like the music, great. By the way, I'm doing this party tonight. You should come. And then they would come and they would see me in my real element because I wasn't doing shit at the game. I was just playing the same 10 songs every single game. It was like whatever. But then you'd come see me after in my element, right? And you'd be like, oh, this is really fun, And then so the next day I'd have like lunch or breakfast with these people before they left town. And then that kind of built the web. And then you do that enough times and you have enough of a web to get to the bigger city.
And another aspect of like what you were at the forefront of was an important era in hip hop, right? The mixtape era. Take us into that because I think that's also a critical way. We know how you've built some of your sports and brand relationships through the Cavs gig, but at the same time you were building hip hop industry connections in a place like Cleveland through doing mixtapes and through your radio show.
Theory, dude. It was the same theory. So you remember where I lived in Cleveland above the House of Blues? I lived like in that apartment and it's like, it was awesome because it was right downtown and it was right on like, at the time, one of the only 2 streets that had restaurants. Yeah. And now it's like 4 streets that had restaurants. And I was on the radio every night. I did a 9 o'clock mix on the radio. I had a bunch of DJ hustles at the time. And so whenever the label reps would come to town, they would want me to play the artist songs on my show because I had a free reign to be able to play whatever I wanted during this 20 minutes versus like what you would normally hear on the radio all day. I haven't listened to the radio in like a decade, but like I assume it's probably the same. Like you're very handcuffed. And so I'd be like, cool. Like I'll play your song or whatever. No, you don't have to pay me any money because we're like live on air right now. But like there's no money ever changed hands. But what you can do is 2 things. Like you want to. They always wanted to do these like meet and greets with the DJs, and I got to the point where I finally pulled rank on it, and I was like, cool. we can only do that if we do it at the House of Blues restaurant, or we could do it at this Italian restaurant that was like another block away. And because I was just like, it was so many of them, and I just didn't want to have to like, I was travel and do. I would have if it was like a Nas, but I mean, we're talking like the fifth member of the Saint Lunatics, like, you know. Right? So I was like, how do I just go fucking downstairs and eat these chicken fingers and chill out? But what I started doing was like having people come back up and record freestyles.
Yeah,
because you're already in the building. And then sometimes we did it at the radio station too. So I would say, no problem, man. I'll play your record. I'll do whatever you want, right? Like, but all I need from you is to just record me something. It could be a verse you already did, but I had the acapella. It could be a new verse that hasn't come out. It could be whatever. And you know, when most of these guys lived in New York or LA, they had to do this all the time. Every DJ, every station. In Cleveland, I was with me and Joey Fingers were the only two people doing that at the time. And we shared everything. Yeah. So they didn't have to come to Cleveland and do 100 of these things. They got to come to Cleveland and chill out, eat some House of Blues food, hang out, and then they only needed a rap for 45 seconds. Like, it was a no-brainer. It wasn't like, imagine going to Hot 97. You'd be like, well, you got to get in for the 3 morning guys, and then the afternoon guy, and then 10 of them, and then the overnight. Like, nah, it was just me. So I was able to leverage all of that to get that. So then I was sitting there with folders and folders and folders of songs and files that nobody had. Yeah. And so I started putting that together in a unique way, not on my own. Like me and Joey Terrier and did a lot too. There was a big scene.
Lead crew.
That I kind of like, you know, shepherded together at that time, and everybody made each other better. And we put together these things, and they were able to catch on first regionally, and then they caught on in New York, and we would come to New York and see him on Canal Street and see him at all these places. Like, you know, if there was an Amadou selling mixtapes, he needed to have mine. Like, that's like that was my, let's go. And it worked. And then the internet mixtape thing happened right around the same time, like a couple years after that, which was great. And that, and then, you know, but what I didn't realize was that I was running another business. I didn't look at that as marketing and product development and acquiring assets and all of these things. And that's really what that all was, right? There were relationships to like get, you know, intellectual property that nobody had. Like, I mean, the whole, you can break this whole thing down as a case study. Yeah. I was just like really fat and wanted to eat chicken fingers. So I was just like, really great. So that happened too. And then when it went online, that enabled me to go from the guy selling the stuff in cities to the guy selling stuff everywhere. And then of course the money all went away in mixtapes, and it wasn't about selling anymore. It was just about exposure and awareness, that took away like a huge chunk of money. It opened up the world, and it was great.
We talked about you know, being the Cavs DJ, and obviously that time period in Cleveland. And, you know, I want to talk a little bit about the LeBron James effect also in terms of your brand and how you were building your brand. You mentioned, you know, how you would have other relationships as a result, or develop other relationships with Pepsi or other sponsors. Talk a little bit about the kind of the LeBron James effect in Cleveland, specifically as it pertains to your career.
I mean, it was a halo effect, you know, not just for my career, but really, like, I mean, you know, when you read those articles when an athlete leaves town and they're just like, the deli went out of business by the arena, or this drive-thru in the apartment building across from Madison Square went out, like, you know, because an athlete left. Right. Like, it's real.
Yeah.
It's highly real. And you know, and the Lord giveth and the Lord taketh away. And so like, when somebody like that's there, and you could create a real like synergy with them, it's you know, it lifts all the tides. And so for me, I was able to like do a lot of those parties and develop that relationship. And it helped tremendously, you know. Yeah. But I put myself in I say that to say you got to put yourself in that position to do it. Mm-hmm. Like, they didn't just pluck me. Yeah. From like random, like I had to like, you know, I had to put in all the dues to even be considered to be able to be a part of that. And I was never even in the inner circle at all. I was in the outer circle, but I was in the outer circle enough that I was respected enough to do occasional things in the inner circle, and vice versa. And so it worked out. And I think, you know, at that time also was
fortuitous, right? Because all of a sudden, people that were never in Cleveland, you were usually DJing the parties, and I saw this in Mecca also when he came in from New York, when we had events. All of a sudden, in a place like Cleveland, you're being exposed to people that you would only meet in New York and LA. And that never happened before that, right? Like, and I think that also allowed us to think beyond Cleveland. And all of us, when LeBron left, I think I left around the same time, you left around the same time. It was like the market has to have the conditions that are conducive for you to be successful.
Yeah. I mean, you put Bill Gates in the middle of the desert, like without the internet, like it's not going to happen. Like, I mean, maybe it would have probably better odds than us, but like you have to have the right environment in order for that to happen.
Yeah.
One other question I have to ask, and you're a thoughtful person, so I think I'm interested in this answer, is how race affected your career, both positively and negatively. I assume that there was doors that probably were closed as a result of that, but also doors that were also open. Talk a little bit about that.
Both, and I'm grateful for both sides of that because it informed me of how I want to just choose to like live my life as a citizen of the planet, not as a person who views things one way or the other. And it also has really informed a lot for how I raised my son, who's mixed race. So I feel more equipped to raise him than the average white dad, which isn't knocking any other white dads. It's just I bet on me more than that, simply because of like the relationships and the friends and the, whatever I can't ever answer for my kid. Like he got a million like uncles he could call at any moment who can, right? He's lucky in that regard. And I'm lucky in that regard. I'm highly blessed in that regard. So growing up, to answer your question more directly, I distinctly know for a fact that I was able to be like the first person playing hip hop on West 6, which was where all like there were the upscale clubs were, quote unquote, because of race. I mean, it probably wasn't 100% because of race, but it was just like it was pretty close. I mean, there were. If I wasn't the first, I was like one of the first. There was a couple other people, but like I was one of the first to do it to the point where it got there. And I remember taking a lot of flack from that, but I didn't know like what was I supposed to do? Like not do it? Like, open up the door for so many other people of all races. So like it was obviously like the right thing to do. The doors had to open it somehow. I was grateful to be the one to open the doors, and then the doors open for everybody. That's happened probably time and time again over the course of my career in a lot of ways. Yeah. But while that was going on, there was also the interesting undercurrent at the time of being a white person in hip hop when it was very different. And there was no Eminem. It wasn't like it was now where it's almost looked at as the tanning of America or whatever, right? Like I distinctively remember selling mixtapes at a place, I don't remember the name of the place, in on St. Clair, like straight like 99 St. Clair, like Bone Thugs Land. Yeah. And going across the bridge to Bracknell, and it was
where all the rich people live.
For people who are familiar with Cleveland, it was literally like a castle and a moat. It was just like it was two completely polar universes, like 50 yards away, connected by a bridge. And so I remember like going over there, and the cops pulled me over there because they saw me handing a baggie of mixtapes. Because there were people some people didn't want the cases. They just wanted to put them in like little sleeves and keep them in their case to sell. So I gave them like a baggie, literally a plastic baggie of like 50 mixtapes and then the covers. So it probably looked a little suspect, I guess, but I remember distinctively, like, it was wild. Like I got like searched, like the car got searched, and up against the cop car and all that. And of course, I'm white, so they like let me go. Like, then the story went the way the story always was. But it was fascinating for me to get pulled over for that because first of all, I wasn't doing anything wrong. Second, it gave me a iota of a microcosm of what. Mecca, you probably go through to this day. God willing, my son won't go through, but he may. Yeah. And so it was great to go through that because it gave me a teaser of what reality really is.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I mean, at the time I was just thinking, what the fuck get me off of this car? But like when I look back on it, like 6 months later, I was just like, yeah, like it was super, super eye opening. And then also like the other aspect of that was like, I had to work 10 times harder to pay my dues at that time. Nowadays it does. I don't think in hip hop, you don't have to, I don't think paying your dues based on race is really an issue anymore. Mm-hmm. It probably kind of, but it's not like it was like in the late 90s. I can't imagine what it was like in the early 90s. So like, if I wanted to do this, like I had to be, I said I definitely wasn't the best DJ, but I'm still good. There's no way this could have happened if I was bad. I had to make sure that I knew I wasn't a culture vulture, but I had to make sure that, all my T's were crossed and my I's were dotted. Yeah. I had so much love for the culture that I didn't ever want that to be misrepresented in any way by happenstance or by sheer whatever. Yeah. And so what did I learn from that? I learned to work even harder, right? Mm-hmm. So the fact that I had to pay extra dues and work extra hard in order to earn my stripes made me a better DJ, and it made me a better business person, and it made me a better member of the culture. So it made me who I am. So it's kind of funny. It's like trial by fire.
Yeah. Mm. That's heavy there. Mm-hmm. So in terms of where you were at, let's go back to kind of the timeline. You're in Cleveland, and I always like to talk about ambition, right? For a lot of people, being the king of their city, which you essentially were, you were making money, you were booked all the time, you had a high profile, but you always wanted more and you wanted to go to New York. Why was the ambition to go to New York? Why was it bigger? Why wasn't that enough for you?
I mean, why not? Right? Like, where else would you go? Like, if you wanted to do something in music, you had to go to New York or LA. New York was the mecca of hip hop. New York was also an hour and 15-minute flight from Cleveland, 55 minutes from Pittsburgh. Like, it was easy.
Yeah.
You could drive it if you had to. All the labels that I worked with, all the people were there. It just was a no-brainer to me.
But I think, and I think yours was intentional, right? Like you had a plan.
Sure. Yeah.
Versus a lot of people just saying, hey, I need to go to New York or LA and just move there and figure it out from there. It seemed like you actually had a plan. And can you talk about the importance of that in your career? Is you're forward thinking. You don't live in the moment. You kind of think about, what am I going to do next year or 2 years from now often? How important has that been, and how valuable do you think that is for anyone? And
cat rubbing his head on the computer, and it's like moving the camera. I'm going to tilt it back up. You can get down. You can get down. Thank you. So I mean, a plan, you need a plan for everything within reason, right? Like, I'm a big believer in having a plan without having a plan. Like, I think you need to have like benchmarks, and I think you need to have like strategy and goals, but I don't think you need to have a roadmap, right? I don't think you need to have it, 1A, 1B, 1C, 1D. Like when those teachers would be like, you have to write your paper, and some kids would come in with the whole outline. Like, I was never like that. I was never that person, because you have to allow the luck and the ability of happenstance to happen, and you have to allow for life to course correct itself, and you never know what's really going to happen. My plan was that I had an MBA, so if shit hit the fan, like, I could just go get a job. That was my plan. Like, my plan was like, I'm good, like, somehow.
Yeah.
Would I be creatively fulfilled? Maybe not. Maybe, but maybe not. Will I be economically okay in order to survive? Like, yeah, sure. And then, worst case, I just come home. Like, worst case, I come home, worst case, I come home and I could just DJ or go get a normal, regular job, like in Cleveland, doing whatever it is that I need to do. And I knew that wasn't going to happen. I knew it was going to work some way, some shape or form. And, as far as like a master plan, it was just like, I don't think I even knew, like, I moved to New York for DJing strictly to DJ, right? I moved to New York strictly to DJ. not like DJ and be an entrepreneur or DJ and do all these other things. And I wanted to just do clubs and do like hot shit. I didn't know about events. I didn't know about traveling. You know, I moved to New York to be in New York. I didn't move to New York to fly away every weekend, but that's what I realized New York allowed me to do. It gave me a platform to be everywhere else. So now I believe this is still true in a lot of ways for my industry. Like I know this whole work from home thing has freed up 99% of industries to do whatever it is that you do. But I still believe that, you know, I needed to be here. People were always like, there got to a point where I was on a plane 2-3 days a week, 4 days a week. And people are like, well, why do you need to live in New York to do that? And I'm like, but for me, it's that person that you meet in the elevator when you're going up the building, or it's like, you know, going to that one dinner, or, you know, even for me, it's been like the other parents I met in my kids' preschool. You know, like my biggest opportunity this year came from a guy whose kid was in the same preschool class as my son. But we didn't know each other. But, you know, relationships on top of relationships on top of relationships, the deck of the agency presenting me as a collaborator to this brand came across his desk. And because I'm a dad first and foremost before I'm even a human, like my kid is so prevalent in everything that it is that I do, that my kid pictures were in the deck, because like it was a social campaign, right? And if you spend 1 second looking at my social stuff, you could see like how, you know, prominent my parenting is to me. So he was like, I know that kid. That's Miles. He's like, oh shit, he was in this class with what I forget the name of his child. And that isn't the only reason I got that gig. Yeah. But that's what sealed the deal. And so I think a lot about how life works in that way. And I could have never planned that. Yep. You know?
And it likely wasn't going to happen in Cleveland either, right? So.
Nah, it wasn't. For me, it wasn't. You know, for some people it could have, and for a lot of people it has. And we don't know, and we know them. And that's great. I knew for me, though, it just was not.
So at that point, too, and it seems as though your brand kind of, around this time was when your brand kind of started to transition from, you know, obviously the clubs and the mixtapes to now kind of being a brand DJ, and then also dropping the Mick Boogie and becoming Mick. Yeah. What was it that made those things kind of happen for you at that time?
Well, I started thinking of myself as a business person, as an entrepreneur. The whole MBA thing kind of came back full circle to me. I've always managed my own life. So I was just like, I started realizing I spent 40, 50 hours a week on my life, not counting the DJing. That was getting grueling. So I might as well own it, right? Like bitching about it. So I started thinking of myself in that regard. And that led to me doing things like this, where I get to talk about it. Once, I just remember like, A, the name was pigeonholing just in general anyways. Secondly, I laughed at on a panel. So I was talking about all these like important people, like, and they all had like names, like real names. And then they introduced me as like, and it took me back to that moment in college where like the teacher gave me that talk about like, I'm not going to be creative or that thing. Because I was in front of the class, like the conversation that teacher said to me back then. And I was like, oh shit, okay, we gotta change this. So I've always hated the word DJ anyways, because it seemed like pigeonholing. And then I was like, oh, but I have my name, and my name is like unique. You know, it's not as unique as you guys' names, but like, like you're not like your rap name, but like your real name. It's like it's but I never met a Swan in my life. So to this day, so like, you know, you could have really capitalized on this, V. You could have.
Thanks for the advice, man. That's $1 million worth of game.
At this one on Instagram. Yeah. But I wonder who has that. Who has it? Have you ever tried to get it?
What? My email, everything. I'm able to get everything. Like I'm able to get everything with my name. I'm not sure if there's anyone in the world with their name spelled like mine is.
You have the one word. You have the one name IG.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah. That's the key. Yeah. Okay. So I just was like, let's just reflip this. I did it in all caps to make it like a brand versus like, because the other problem is because of the my name not having a what's the word am I looking for? Not having a foreign or fancy or high level kind of like connotation. Like if my name was like Francois. Like I could have just rocked with the lowercase, right? Like, but Mick, it just becomes like, you know, it was just, I had it by capitalizing it, made it more of a brand.
Yeah.
versus a name.
Yeah.
And I was lucky too that it was short. It was 4 letters. Again, if it was just like, Consuela.
Consuela.
Oh man.
So then now you obviously you said at this point in time, well, first of all, you never really wanted to just be viewed as a DJ. And then at this point in time in particular, I think you started to realize the value of other things, right? Beyond just music and what that network could do for other things in your life. And then also, like you said, it brought it back full circle with the MBA. And then you started looking at investing. And that was very interesting to me. I remember watching that happen. Never really got a chance to talk to you about it. But it seemed as though that was happening around the same time that I started to hear about a lot of other people in music getting in and invest. Not a lot, but some other people like Chameleonaire and Nas, and maybe this was a little bit before Nas. Why did that start making so much sense to you, and why did that become of interest to you as well?
Well, I had a marketing background, right? So I understood the concepts of it very well, or at least well enough. And I had a lot of relationships. So then I started placing myself in these situations where I didn't want to be a DJ at a DJ dinner, and I didn't want to be a DJ at a music industry dinner. I'd done that for, at this point, 15 years. I wanted to be the DJ at the business dinner, right? Or the creative guy at the non-creative dinner. And so I started putting myself in these different worlds where, I was never going to be the coolest DJ. I was never going to be the most fashionable dude during Fashion Week. I was never going to be the most Hollywood dude during a Hollywood party. I'm just who I am. Like, I'm an Ohio dude that lives in Brooklyn, and I'm a dad. And it's kind of like, I'm kind of in many ways, I've changed a lot, but in a lot of ways, I'm like still the same person. And so, for better or for worse. And so I had to figure out what my strengths were. And so if I could put myself in rooms where I could be the coolest person, and I don't not literally mean the coolest person, but like if I could put myself in rooms where I stand out and I can add value, having a different creative perspective, and also having a job that people now the job I had was interesting to people.
Yeah.
Whereas prior, the job I had to people was like the plague.
Yeah.
2013, 2014, 2015, the whole EDM shit was happening, all of that. Now DJing is cool.
Yep.
Right? So everybody wants to talk to DJs. Everybody's kid's a DJ. Everybody wants everybody wants this. And social's blooming so people could see people's personalities and all that. So I was able to leverage all of that to be like, oh, we know this guy, he's a DJ, but not just that, but he can sit at a table and have like a conversation and blah, blah, blah. And so I was able to use the fact that I tell all my friends that are like that are really smart brand aware DJs. And I tell all my other friends that are like, they work for themselves, that are, that have a product that you could sell with you, whether you're, you referenced it kind of back in the day with like the barbershop example, but like at a more like super business forward perspective. Like I tell my friends that are like on the cusp chefs, people, if you have a skill where you can serve the public, but that skill is you have an untapped ability to go into rooms and add value, right? Because if I'm at a dinner party and you're at a dinner party and you're at a dinner party, right? And you work for, I'm making this up, if you work for IBM and you work for Apple, and somebody at their dinner party is looking for like a tech client. Obviously, those are good or bad examples because they're amazing companies. But like, let's say you work for like the next whatever, right? And you're just like, oh yeah, and by the way, if you guys are ever need microprocessors for your backline system, check out V or check out Mecca. Like, you're gonna be like, cool, great, thanks for the card, and then throw that shit out, right? But with my job, right, my job is actually cool. So they're like, oh, when you need a DJ, they're gonna remember me from, or they're gonna know somebody or their friends or their cousin, and they'll remember me from that. And because I have such a fun job and I have a job where people actually want to hire like Joy, I was getting all of that referral business from being in that. So I was adding value to them, they were adding value to me, and I was beginning to build these relationships like that. I think I don't know if I explained that right, but
you did. I'm
not selling a product, right? Like, you get like those LinkedIn emails, like I just like, hey, you just delete them. Like, I'm not selling a product. Like,
Right.
you know, and my product is me.
So I wanted to get into two things, right? Like in the culture we live in, anything that people see is cool and is attached. Like, for example, when the fact that Nas was part of the Ring doorbell investment initially, it becomes cooler now, right? It's obviously still a great business, but now it's cooler. But there's another side to entrepreneurship, venture capital, and the startup community that I think a lot of people lose in the glory of it all, right? Because you are putting money at risk. And one of the things I learned always is when you're investing in things like that, it shouldn't necessarily be your primary source of income. An investment should not be your prime. But for you, it's like you were able to trade the equity you had as a DJ for equity in some of these brands. You were able to trade that and make people see that as value for their brands too.
Yeah. Now I can. I couldn't at the beginning.
Yeah.
But now I'm trying to do deals where it's at minimum like 50-50, right?
Yeah.
You know, especially now with this pandemic. Like I'm like, you know, DJing's a wrap right now. Like I'm not sitting here making any money right now. Like I'm just like at all. So it's just like, you know, but it opened my eyes to like other value I can add to people where there's not, you know, money crossing, you know, what's the word, like exchanging hands right now. Like there's tons of other things of value that I could offer people.
Mm-hmm.
And this year made me sit down and really realize that. And it's all stuff that actually I thought I was doing already. Actually, I was doing already, but I wasn't figuring out how to make that work for me. But now I'm like, there's a fee to that. And whether that fee is money or that fee is equity or that fee is relationships or whatever it is, you get both sides now. Because I have the ability now to help in that regard. And I didn't realize at the time that that's a valuable currency.
Yep.
Right. And now you've also gotten into podcasting, you know,
yes,
which I think is fantastic.
20 years later, that's exactly what the world needs to know.
Yeah, right. Podcasts are popping up all over the place, but you know, there's value in someone like you, particularly who has the extensive experience and knowledge you have, but then also the relationships. Talk a little bit about that. What made you get into it, and what's the focus for you there?
Well, I mean, it's something I've always wanted to do. I never had the time to do it at all. And now with the world slowed down, I do have the time. And I actually, I was told I invested in Anchor, which Spotify bought a couple years ago, and they were always just like, they basically became Spotify's podcast division. And it was like, yo, what are you doing? Like, when are you going to do this? And I'm just like, well, maybe when I'm not like a DJ or a dad or like, you know, was going through some personal shit as well. And I'm just like, one day. And then finally this summer, I'm just like, oh, okay, I got the time. So, you know, finding a great team of people to like help, make that a reality. You know, we're 3 episodes in right now. We have a whole first season recorded. We already got, guests clamoring for season 2, which will be really exciting. We'll see. You know, I'm really excited. I'm measured in my expectations. Yeah. I don't want to do anything unless it's excellent, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I need this to go excellently, and I need this to go at a certain level of high standards of which I expect, because this is my show. It's my name. It's literally, the show is my name. So if this doesn't go well, then it's my name. It's not anybody else's shit. So like, I'm just very, 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 very involved with it, you know, to make sure that it goes well. And it will.
What's the focus or the focal point?
The focal point, well, there's actually no focal point, but there's kind of like a focal point. My theory and thesis in life is that we are all like creatives, and regardless of whether or not you're told you're creative, or whether or not you think you're creative, like we all have aspects of creativity, right? And so that doesn't matter if you're a DJ, an athlete, a CEO, a sports anchor, a chef, like. And I always felt like it kind of goes back to like what I told you about my grad school story, right? About like, you can't be creative and you can't be a business success at the same time. Then you extrapolate that into like corporate America. And then think about you go into these companies and I tell this story all the time, so I feel like it's like repetitive, but I don't know if you've ever heard it. You go into a lot of these companies, and it's changing now, but you would walk into a company and imagine you go and you see like the accountants and the HR and all these people, and they're all in these little shitty cubicles with no windows, and they're using fucking Windows computers that barely work, and you know, it's just like the bad coffee machines and all of that shit, right? And then you go to the floor with the creatives.
Yeah.
And they got the windows and the foosball table and the fucking open kitchen and the MICKs,
alcohol.
Right? Yeah, it's like Silicon Valley shit. And then, like, you know, if the HR people weren't creative enough to fucking hire you, you wouldn't have that job. And so that made me think a lot, like, how does that affect your psyche? How does that affect your subconscious, you know, ability to work creatively within whatever it is that your job is? Imagine if you told a heart surgeon he wasn't creative when you're about to die and you have 13 seconds left and this motherfucker has to pick a vein. Like, you know, you got to figure that shit out. That's creativity, right?
Yeah.
And so my thesis is that we all are creatives. And I want to share the creativity secrets, not just from those that we look at as creatives, which are things, and, you know, but also business people and authors and sports people. And, like, you know, let's talk about that. Well, and of course we talk about their stories and we talk about music and it's fun. It's a very freewheeling conversation. Yeah. But my thesis is that, like, especially now, we are all multi-hyphenates. If you're not, you're probably fucked.
Yeah.
Even if you are the most non-creative, boring job ever, you probably do have a side hustle that's creative, or you have a passion that's creative.
Right.
Creativity doesn't have to be this. It's because, you know, like 5 years ago, creativity was what, like, self-care was, like, last year, and then in 3 years it'll be like another thing. It's like a curate and all these. We have these buzzwords, and it's just like, now it's just what we are.
Yeah.
I mean, look at how you're born. You're born through, like, procreation. Like, you know, you have something fun. It's like recreation, which is like recreation. Like, creativity is the root of literally everything. So let's.
Yeah, I know we're really excited for you.
That's tough. So.
No, that's great.
I know we're really excited for you, and I think it makes a lot of sense. We talk a lot about brand, and it makes sense for who you are and what you represent to put it together through a format like a podcast. So, but one more question before we get a couple fun things and get you out of here. I know you're busy. The pandemic, right? And circling back to what you said at the end about being multi-hyphenate, there are two ways I think people can approach this pandemic, right? It's the simple acronym: fear everything and run, or face everything and rise. And I think what we're seeing from you and other people is you are using this time to say what's next. You're not thinking about, oh, well, I lost all this money that I was making as a DJ. These are the circumstances that we have now.
Yeah.
How do we adjust and pivot to make sure when this thing is over, we're in a position to reap the reward? I wanted you to kind of take into that, talk about that, especially as a DJ, the live Instagram DJing and things that you're doing to keep yourself going during these times.
Well, I could tell you that the first half of the pandemic, I was pretty, like, fucked up. Woe is me. You know, what am I going to do? DJing, blah, blah, blah. Like, you know, and live entertainment was hit harder than almost every other industry, except for maybe, like, you know, food. But that's come back. But what hasn't really come back, at least in the major cities, is live entertainment, especially the level of stuff I do. So I was living in the woe is me, I need to make this come back mind state. And it would start to drive me nuts when I would, like, look on, like, Instagram, or just, like, look at it and see other people out there, like, living their lives, not just from like I have friends that make more money now than they ever made. You know, I have friends that are getting hired left and right. I mean, I know somebody, she has 3 job interviews every week. And I'm sitting there, like, still getting cancels. Like, now we're canceling, like, you know, January. I just watched the cancels happen. And so my reality was literally a whole new version of cancel culture. And not everybody, but a lot of other people's reality was not, right? Yeah. It was, and again, I know some people who are, like, they're very smart, they're very creative, so they're able to put themselves in these situations. But I had to realize that my mindset was limiting what I'm able to do during this downtime, right? And so I stopped looking at it as a negative. I mean, it still is a negative in, like, a zillion ways. Obviously, you can't get to wear a mask if you say, but there's so many positives. Like, hey, first and foremost, I get to be, like, the most present for my son ever, and I was always super present anyways. Now I'm literally, like, wildly present. Like, it's, like, insane. And, like, that will go away next year. Not like the love and the heart and like the ability when we're together, but it's not going to be like it is this year where like daddy's just here all day, all the time. That's a gift, right? That's a gift. And so once I had accept and acknowledge and love that, because that's amazing. Secondly, like I had to realize like the world's back. I change my mind state every day now when I wake up to be like, the world's back. What are you going to do with it? Not like the world's not coming back yet. Will the world come back? My world is fucked. Blah, blah, blah. That waking up with that sort of mind state and that sort of mentality is not going to help you. Like I can't control when brands decide to do events again. Like, you know, I can't control if the people who used to hire me even at these brands, when they come back, if they come back, whenever that is. But what I can control is what I work on every day. So I work every day now, regardless of what the bank account says. I work like I'm making $1 million, even if I'm making $1, because that mindset enables me to go out there and succeed, right? Because that's the way the world is going. The world is trending back that way. And it's when you walk out the house with good energy like that, and you go into meetings with that sort of energy, and you create platforms and content with that sort of energy, like, you know, even on Instagram, like nobody wants to hear the mask jokes anymore. Nobody wants to hear like we're 6-7 months into this shit now. Nobody wants to hear about the sob story anymore. That was really great. And that was absolutely trending in April and May. But now, you know, you post a picture of your mask, like people are like, I mean, obviously they might even wear the mask, but they're still taking it off for the picture. Like we're past that moment where we want this to be a time capsule of what was going on. Yeah. Like, you know, but in April and May, when you were taking pictures with your friends, you're all like 6 feet apart with the mask. It was cute. Now it's just like, now I take my kid outside, I take a picture of him, I'm like, bro, pull your mask down for a second. I don't want to see a year's worth of our life with a mask. You know, obviously wear that shit when we're like, when I look back at it, like I don't want to not see my son's face for a year in photos and videos, because when I look back at this when I'm old, because of that. And that's the same sort of mindset that I think you need to approach life and business with, right? Like the world's back. What are you going to do with it? And so that's kind of how I approach everything now. And then my excitement is if I can figure this out now, well, the other part of my life is slow. When that part of my life comes back, and it will come back, it's going to come back transformed, but it's absolutely going to come back. Like, how much better off will I be from this? I mean, I'll probably be crazy, but like, I'll be like, it'll be awesome, right? You know, I used to say for years, like, what am I going to do after DJing is done? Well, now I get it. It's like a preseason. It's like my little MBA bubble. Like I get a little test case to see what that's like, because it's done. Yeah. You know, it will come back. But like now I get to fully test all the things I always wanted to test that I said one day when I'm 50, I'm going to do. I do it now. Yeah. See what works, see what I like, see what sticks, see what doesn't, see what's generating money, see what's causing me emotional stress. Keep, you know, recompile the pot however I want it. So when I go back into like my real work, I can pick and choose, and I know better how I want the future to go. It's kind of awesome. It's like you get a mini, you know, it's like time traveling to like a little alternate world, a little simulation. You get to play the game. Yeah. That's that. Then you come back from Oz, and you go back to your life. You kind of know a little bit about yourself now, and that's how I look at it.
I think it's a huge opportunity.
Yeah, that's deeper than probably we realized the answer was going to be. But I think that was perfect, because that's exactly right. This has been a awakening in a lot of ways for a lot of people in a lot of different ways. And like you said, I'm a father also, so being present with my son, he's 3. I mean, I'm like you, I was always present, but it just presents so many new opportunities. So
different level present now.
Yeah, it's definitely a different level. So we're going to ask you some fun things, and we're going to get you out of here. This has been a great interview, very informative. But now we're going to do some fun stuff. So tell us your top 5 musicians of all time. And we asked this to everybody, but to hear from you on this one is I'm particularly interested in.
Musicians in which regard?
So any type of music, literally like. No, it could be artists, rappers, singers, anything. Anyone that just,
Okay, because I have like 2 categories.
What have inspired you the most, probably? That's probably.
Because it's interesting, because like I have like things I like because they're amazing, and then I have things I like because I think they're technically better.
Right.
Yeah. So like, for example, for me, like Low End Theory was a more classic Tribe album. Midnight Marauders to me was a technically, lyrically, production superior album.
Yeah.
But it wasn't more classic because it didn't define culture as much as as Low End Theory did. And you couldn't have had Midnight Marauders without Low End Theory. So there's always been a lot of those things, like for me, like a weird duality of it. But because we want to keep this quick, I would say Stevie Wonder.
Mm-hmm.
I would say Red Hot Chili Peppers, specifically Flea, who's a virtuoso.
Mm-hmm.
No genre of music that man can't play or do. I would say Jay, just for every reason in the entire world. I would say Drake, because he's literally a Swiss Army knife in every single possible way. Like, he's white, he's black, he's Jewish, he's Christian, he's American, he's Canadian, he's a rapper. Like,
right,
like what?
And his knowledge, I remember when you invited me to the Two Kings dinner, you and him were having a conversation. I was just sitting there like, I'm listening to two encyclopedias talk, right? Like, his knowledge of music and
our first and only conversation. But yeah, that was a good conversation. But he was a student of the culture just like I was, and I worked out much better for him. For me.
Worked out pretty well for you too.
And I would trade. You saw his kitchen, and I thought that video was filmed at a department store. I thought
the house was crazy.
Yeah, I didn't know it was the house. It was crazy. I really thought they just shut down like some department store downtown Toronto. So that was 4.
Yeah.
One more.
And I would say I'm gonna go way left with it, just because I'm a big Robert Glasper fan. Like he's a very tremendous, amazing jazz musician. And, I would say him.
Okay.
Love it.
It's a great list. Second one is your top 5 athletes that have inspired you. I think Jordan might be one of them. You started your career, right?
Yeah, just Jordan. I mean, Jordan's on everyone's list, but like for me, it's a little more personal because of the fact that I was able to sell the rookie card to get the career.
Yeah,
I got to tell that story one day. That's really interesting.
Yeah.
Even if you look at like the highest value of that card, I think like with mint condition, never been touched, I think it was like 30, 40,000. Like it was 500 at the time for me. And then now basketball cards having a moment again. I think it's like 30 or 40, but like 30 or 40 gave me like a career. It's like, it's still pretty good odds. So that I would say Larry Bird, because I grew up a huge Celtics fan, and that was my entry point into basketball, which gave me a huge entry into culture, which gave me a huge entry into my life. And so, that Larry and Magic rivalry in the 80s was huge, very informative to me. My kid's a Celtics fan now, but he just cares about whoever scores 100 first. It's like, he doesn't care about the actual score. It's like, whoever gets 100 first is the winner. And I'm like, bro, that's not how it goes. But like, I applaud that you can count to 100. So that's great. So what is that? 3? No.
Yeah.
2.
I'll say LeBron for every reason in the book.
Yeah.
I would say Serena for all the barriers she's broke and just the level of excellence she's shown across decades now, which is wild. I would probably throw Venus in there too for that. And lastly, I would say going back to my Celtics, I would say I'm going to do 6. I'm going to do 2 more Celtics. I'm going to do Jaylen Brown, because I would love for my son to grow up with that level of intelligence and compassion. Mm-hmm. Like knowing that you could use your day job to affect change. I think he's an amazing citizen, and I love that. And I was thinking about getting my son I was like, what Celtics jersey am I going to get him? Because when he was little, I got him a Kyrie run, and that didn't work out. And I think Jaylen Brown's going to be there for a long time. And he also, I'm pretty sure he wears number 7, like how D Brown did.
Yep.
So it's kind of dope. So I can get him like the Jaylen Brown jersey,
and the shoes,
super like intelligent, emotional, and like woke. But then I could also get him like the throwback like Reebok pumps. Yeah, he could be like both eras of Celtics. I'm probably going to order that right now, actually. And then I actually recently during these playoffs fell back in love with how Marcus Smart plays the game.
Yeah.
You know, and I actually thought about getting my son his jersey too, simply just because it says smart.
Smart on the back, yeah.
And I tell him every day that he's smart. And I think he's pretty smart. And there's probably kids smarter and there's probably kids dumber. But he's pretty smart. But like, I want him to know that, right?
Yeah.
Like, when I grew up, like being smart was bad. I had to hide my report cards when my cousins came over. Right? I was like, it was just like, what? You know, I had to hide the shit that I was good at. Like for him, we're not doing that. We're not playing that shit at all. So I think I'm going to get him like both of those. But when they did the playoffs and then he took the guys in the locker room and like basically like whooped the whole team's ass, and then they came out stronger the next game and they loved him for it. That's the sort of passion, the sort of leadership, because that, you know, that's just sort of say they could fracture a team tremendously. And this guy, I mean, from what I read, it was like 1 on 12, and they came out unified, and it speaks power to how much people respect the passion and the compassion for how, you know, and the not backing down of what he does. And so, like, you know, that's you know, I'm getting long winded with this, but I think of everything in terms, as I'm sure you do, as of my son. So I think about what I want to impart upon him.
I think that's the beautiful thing about sports, right? And those are like some of the hidden things that I think we get from sports, and why, you know, missing sports was such a big deal for people. It's not just, you know, to see the amazing athletes and amazing dunks and stuff, but it's also kind of the culture and the stories and the camaraderie and the, you know, just, you know, the will and all the other things that you see that you don't really get to necessarily see on a day-to-day basis. Yeah. And then you can draw inspiration from, like you said, in your own life. So I think those are, you know, very, very poignant answers. The
last one we have to get before you get out of here. Let's try to make this one quick. Your top 5 gigs of all time, if you have a list.
Jeez, I don't even know. I mean, I would say the Cavs stuff in a generality because of what it gave me.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I would say the LeBron James dinners back in the day, because those enabled me to meet the people that would change my life.
Yeah.
I don't want to say change my life, but like, you know, open up pathways that enabled like my life to change. I would say, man, I don't know. That's great. Like I have answers for different reasons. My favorite gigs ever to this day, though, were those first gigs I did when I was like 19 years old with One Creative Records downtown.
Yeah.
The culture was so different. It was a subculture where people really danced to obscure underground music and hip hop, and it was really fun. And I could play anything, and people would go nuts. And what you didn't have to just play whatever just came out that day or whatever. And it was fun. And I was still so new that it felt like I was going, when I would leave my dorm room and get my car and drive downtown to do a 45-minute set with One Creative Records, I felt like I was entering like this magical portal to like a different world. And then I would go back to like my real life. So those, you know, hindsight, it probably sucked, but like in 2020, but like it's, those were magical times to me. So I would put that whole first year of DJing Suite in there.
Yeah.
And, you know, I got to do New Year's Eve once on the top of the World Trade Center, the new World Trade. That was pretty cool. Wow. Just from a view, you know, bring a New Year's at the pinnacle of New York City.
Right.
And 5 would be, oh, you know what I would say? It's funny. It's like a non-traditional one, but I did a wedding. I started doing a lot of weddings, which is really interesting. But I love doing weddings for like the right couples because it's fun. You know, I used to be embarrassed when I would do weddings. And now I'm just like, I actually love it because they seek me out because they trust that I'm going to be able to give them something to carry them off in joy for the rest of their lives. And I don't do obviously every wedding that like comes in, but like, you know, I'd choose the ones with couples that I vibe with, or like if they're rich, that helps. But also like wedding, like, you know, there's all sorts of like variabilities. I actually don't even have rates. Just full disclosure. Like my rates are 0 to like not 0. There's all situational. But from a fun perspective, I did a wedding a year or 2 ago in Tulum, and it was my first time ever there. And I got to I never take vacations, and I got to chill out for like a day or 2 before the wedding, which was highly rare for me. So I was in a great mood. And they booked Mace to perform at their wedding too.
Wow!
Nobody knew. It was a complete surprise for all the guests. And so what was cool? It was the most Tulum thing. It was like palm trees and candles. It was a made for Instagram wonderland of a gig. And after they got married and they did the first dance and all that shit, I started playing, and then we just didn't tell anybody. I started playing. I played. What did I play? I played 112 Only You, and then the Biggie verse comes on, everyone's rapping along, and the 112 verse comes on, everyone's rapping along, and then the Mace verse comes on, you can run if you want to, whatever. And dude, walk out through the kitchen with a mic.
Oh wow,
that's dope.
And right in the middle of the dance floor, and people went nuts.
Yeah, I can't even imagine.
And then he did like a whole little set, and he was supposed to bounce. He ended up staying for the whole wedding, like partying, doing the horror, all that shit. Like it was just like, it was really fun. But as a, for me, for the culture, it was like, A, I got to play records for an artist I grew up loving. B, like I was in the most beautiful place in the world, surrounded literally with love. Good friends with the bride and groom to this day, probably because of how awesome that experience was. It was just like, it was a nice full circle moment for me that records I was playing 20 years before could get me a much needed vacation, the ability to pay for my kid. I get to meet and work with an artist that I look up to, and in the most peaceful, tranquil, beautiful environment ever. And create a mood and enable people to have joy for the rest of their lives if I don't fuck it up. So that would be, I can't answer anything short, man. I'm sorry.
No, that's good. No, I mean, that's why we have you on the podcast, right? But no, this was great, Mick. Thank you so much for joining us on the Pilot Boys podcast, man. We look forward to continuing watching what you're doing and drawing inspiration from you. I'm sure there'll be new things that pop up, like you said, in 2021. We want to hear all about them when they happen. And, stay in touch with us, man. Be safe.
Sure. Cool. Thank you.
All right. Take care, man.
Take care, man.
Peace.
Yeah. That was fun. Thank you. Hey, that part where you guys were asking me about like the racial shit, was any of that weird?
No, it was good.
Okay. Just make sure, like, give that another listen though before you go back, or especially have Mecca listen to it, because it's 2020. I don't think I said anything weird at all. I think
I think it was. I listened to it, and I think it was real.
I wanted to be thoughtful and truthful in answers, but like it was all, just have him also look at it too.
Yeah, I'll have him give it another listen. I think you handled it well and handled both sides of it.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't say anything flagrant or inflammatory. I literally said
you didn't.
Honored to have to go through that stuff. It could have gave me perspective, but
I think it's good to get that, especially in times like this. Like I think you're able to offer an honest perspective that's unique, and because you're in the culture, right? And this culture that's been created by Black people has given you so much, right?
Yeah.
At the same time, you realize there's still issues that we're working through in the country, and you've had to literally deal with them your whole life,
Yeah. I mean, I just feel like, just make sure. But
we'll give it another listen for sure.
All right. So great to see you, man. You look great.
Seeing you too, man.
All right, I'll talk to you. When is this coming out?
It should be out Thursday. This time.
Like tomorrow? Or today's Tuesday. Like in 2 days.
In 2 days, I'll let you know.
Okay.
Okay.
Appreciate you. So great to see you.
Pilot Boys, we get on up. We don't fly, boys.